Hello, I'm Marion Kumi, a professor with the School of Radio and Television Arts at Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. And this talk is titled The Virtual Newsroom, an international online collaboration between broadcast journalism students. I'll start with a bit of history. About 15 years ago here in the Faculty of Communication and Design at Ryerson, I started up our student exchange program with partners around the world. It's been really successful, but I soon discovered that out of a student body of 500, perhaps a dozen, maybe 18 students every year were getting to go on exchange. It's an excellent experience. It's a life-changing experience for students to go on an international exchange. But I started thinking about ways to get more students involved with internationalization. How could I get students to interact with each other, to meet and interact with faculty at other universities? It could be sharing ideas, it could be sharing assignments, getting together to debate issues. There were very few examples when I started looking into this in 1995 of media, communications, film, journalism types of collaborations. So I developed something over a few years that I called the Virtual Newsroom. And I had partners in the UK, in Germany, in Hong Kong, in Australia, and in New Zealand. And the idea was to create a website where the students could come together, discuss ideas that were news in their own city, in their own country, but also had enough global appeal to be interesting to audiences in other parts of the world. So I took photographs at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation here in Toronto in the National Newsroom and got someone to build me a website where we animated the newsroom picture. And so it's a room full of desks with telephones on them and a big wall of monitors at the back that was going to be used, I'll explain in a moment, for the project. I found some like-minded instructors at my partner universities who were willing to get students in their existing courses or classes involved, and they gave them an alternative assignment to an assignment that already existed, because we ran into problems that are typical, as in, do we create a new class or course? If we do so, how many years will it take us to go through approval? So if we chose my students from my documentary course, they're already in my course, I already had an assignment that everybody was doing, and the people that participated just did this as an alternative assignment. And the stories that were produced in each location would be graded by the faculty member in that location. And that also then met with every university's standards of how the students would be graded. So it was a great idea. I had university partners, I had students that were willing to participate, but we're now talking about something that happened 10 years ago. And in the year 2000, we ran into a lot of problems. Many universities did not have 24-hour computer labs, and a lot of students still didn't have computers at home. So we would be online chatting together, and students perhaps in the UK would say, oh, it's 8 o'clock at night, the computer lab is shutting down, I'm being kicked out, and I don't have a computer at home with internet access. So those problems became a huge issue. Bandwidth 10 years ago was a huge issue. People were producing video, but we couldn't send it to each other. People were landing up having to mail their videotapes to Toronto, where they were all in different formats from around the world, and we would have to turn them into our format in order to put them on our website in order for everybody to look at them. So that became a huge issue. Chat rooms are so easy to use nowadays, but just 10 years ago, I would have occasions where students would be able to type but not be able to see what anybody else was typing, or the other way around. Or they'd be on for a minute and then they'd be booted off, or their system would fail them. Several times, I would be on the telephone with one student who couldn't get online. I would be emailing another student who couldn't get online, and then a few other people were in the chat room. So I was having live discussions with telling the person on the phone, oh, the person in Australia just said this, and then having to email that to somebody else and having to have the conversation that way. It was, to say the least, very awkward, very frustrating, and all the time things kept crashing and going down the tubes. It was a difficult situation. The two other main big issues that come up in these collaborations are time differences. I put together a big chart of when everyone in Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Germany, England, and Canada were awake. And there were 4 or 5 hours a day that were logical for people to be talking to each other online. Everyone had to take their turn being up at 2 o'clock in the morning or being up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Semester differences were another huge issue. When the Australians and New Zealanders were just getting into the middle of their winter spring semester, it was sort of September, October, the Canadians were just beginning their fall semester, and the British students were beginning their fall semester at the end of September. So you would be paired up with students from other universities, and all of a sudden, well, it's my holiday now, and I've disappeared. And that was very frustrating for the students not to have people to work with on a continuous basis. Convincing undergraduate students to participate in a program like this is also an issue. They were happy to do the stories that they were being graded for in their home university, but when they were asked to chat and collaborate and do more work, it seemed like more work I'm being asked to do that I'm not necessarily being graded for. We still came up with some great ideas. We had one story that was called the 24-hour newsroom, and the 24-hour city. And students went out in their own cities with a shopping list of what's available in your city at 3 o'clock in the morning. Can you get a haircut? Can you go to the bank? Can you buy a meal? Can you go to a movie? And they all went out and shot this story, and then they came back and discussed it online. So the goal was to have the students work together. They didn't really. They worked alone, and they talked about it after, and they looked at each other's stories after, but they weren't really able to collaborate. Still, in the evaluation of the project, everyone said, well, it was more work than I thought I would have to do, but I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed getting to see what the other cities were doing in their stories. I was interested in talking to the students about the way they tell stories in their city, in their school, how journalism functions in different locations, and seeing how different the stories were when they were finished. So flash forward a decade, it's now 2010. I'm still interested in developing online collaborative projects, and many of the technical problems have been solved. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Skype, we have YouTube. I've developed a new project now in 2010 called the Global City. Edinburgh, Napier University, Ryerson in Toronto, Auckland University of Technology in New Zealand, UTS in Sydney are going to participate in the first iteration. We think we've solved the problem of varying semester starts by having a rolling start. So the Australia and New Zealand students will get started in August, developing ideas, developing plans for the website. The rest of us will join in September and October. And when the Australians and New Zealanders head off for their summer holidays in mid-November, we will continue the fine points of tuning the website, putting the stories on it. It won't matter what group you're with, because the professors will remain a constant, and the students will continue to change, but they'll all continue to work with each other. So we are going to have a flow of stories that come in. We're going to develop a website where people can debate those stories and analyze them. We're still going to have the stories happening within existing classes at existing universities so that there's no new courses being developed yet. It's something down the road that I would love to have an international course that students could sign up for where they got credit for it at a number of different universities. There's still an issue of creating a website that's not owned by any one university that we all feel an equal access to, and finding the students who are willing to spend extra time beyond what they're getting graded for to engage in online chat. There's an end goal for this, which is to create a 24-hour newsroom that will have depending upon when you are awake in your own given country, you will be the host for 2 or 3 hours. The stories will come into a huge repository, and the students around the world will get to choose stories from all of those different locations. Maybe just take clips of them, take an interview quote from them, use them or not use them as they see fit. So it's something that is starting up in September, will be continuing over the next few years. Stay tuned. If you're interested in hearing any more about this project, my email is mcoomey@ryerson.ca. That's MCOOMEY@RYERSON.ca. Thanks for listening.